So we are back here to talk about restarting tourism in a way. We still know that we don't have all the answers and maybe fewer answers than ever before. But what we know is that people will change and their behavior will change. And now we have Milena joining us in this conversation. So I would actually just want to give it over to you, Milena. How do you think that the behavior of people that are traveling will change?
Thank you so much. I think that one of the silver linings, really, from my perspective to this crisis, is that everybody now understands how important it is to be able to understand and also predict and also influence human behavior. We can see that how people in different countries responded with their perceptions, with their fears or ignorance was fundamental to the health of the nations, of the respective nation. So I think that the good thing is that we now understand how important it is to consider how people respond to a situation and figure out what are the best solutions so that you can achieve the optimal results in terms of individual benefits and also benefits for the society. One of the things that we are certain about is that this is going to really leave a mark on how people think about travel, how they make decisions, and how they consume experiences. There's several things which we know will change, and there's many things that we actually cannot predict. A big factor here is how long this crisis will continue and what will be the economic impacts of it, because it's one thing to want to overcome, or actually to overcome the fear of travel, the fear of crowds, the fear of uncontrolled hygiene, and it's a different thing to actually be able to economically. So I think that a key factor here will be that.
Mm-hmm. And do you think, and maybe Sina, you can come into this as well, that we will in a way use this situation to be more sustainable in how we act, you know, like the government and the business owners and everyone. And I'm now keeping in mind the unsustainable growth that we had in a way when tourism was growing really fast in Iceland. What do you think?
Well, I mean, from my point of view, that's also why it's so important we have these conversations now and that we explore together, because I think we also discussed it earlier, that it's not just a passive, progress that we will then see what happens then after the crisis and then we'll just respond to that. We're actually in a situation now where by discussing what we want to happen as well and how we want to reshape it, we can influence what our priorities will be. And I think because the big fear, of course, is that we'll be so eager to get back to what we knew and how we, get the economy going, that we'll forget about the situation that we had before with unsustainable growth and over tourism and the negative impacts of tourism on local communities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And it's also like when you think about the marketing versus the management, and you think about the destinations and what they should really be like focusing on now, are there some, good examples or good talks that you have been a part of, any of you, that is like relevant to this discussion now?
Yeah, who want to talk? Well, I think it is like what is really has been going on until before this crisis has been like how destinations has maybe changed their management and how you have been more before focusing on marketing and then more and more focusing on management. And it has been, this discussion about DMO, if it is the destination marketing organization or destination management organization. And I don't really think that is a relevant discussion all the time, because for me, it is like everything is about management, is also including marketing and development and handling of crises like this. What is interesting though is how you see the destination organizations has been changing over time, the competences and the skills that they need to have within the organization. And that has been going on for quite a while. And it's quite interesting to see what will happen out from this step as well. Will this lead to change within these DMOs? Or will it be organized in a completely new way? I mean, I think it is also interesting to see where other authorities are more involved in tourism, that not only the DMOs are actually kind of working with this, but it is something that is spread over a wider area, like municipalities and everyone are working more with that. But it is also like when we talk about tourism and there are always conflicts about tourism, and it is like backsides, and everyone are aware of that. But it is also interesting, what would it be without tourism, and what would when we take the tourism away, what happens then? Do you actually reflect about that? I mean, restaurants, cinemas, and all the leisures and such, could that be open? Also, like transportation opportunities, ferry lines, and things like that also locals are using. Everything is depending on all of that, of course. So it is not like, it is quite a complex discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sorry.
You go.
No, Daniel's words made me think about one sort of positive observation that was made by Rafat from Skift, who said that now that the world has actually stopped traveling, people realize how important tourism is to national and global economies. Mm. So we can certainly hope to have much more attention from authorities across the board to supporting tourism entities and trying to revive the local tourism ecosystems in order to really continue seeing the benefits.
Mm-hmm. I think if I had a wish moving forward, I don't know if we're in a world where you can make wishes, but if you could, I think I would wish that the mentality that we see right now in terms of there are loads of hashtags that starts with hashtag we are, and the whole point is we're all in this together, and that's how we'll pull through is by doing it together, sharing our experiences. We talked about it last time as well, being brave, experimenting, all these things. But then I do see sort of a starting discourse or a starting way of putting it that, beyond the crisis or after the crisis, let's get ready with all our huge marketing campaigns because the competition will be more fierce than it ever has been, So, and I think that change is a little bit unfortunate because, of course, it's always been a competition to attract travelers, I guess. But I think if we could somehow maintain that, we're in it together, and let's try and also be in it together afterwards in terms of, as you said, Daniel, the responsibility really is also what I heard you say of management and marketing. Let's not necessarily go back to the good old days of broadcast marketing of destinations, but let's, maintain all the things that we've learned and share how it works and continue to have the hashtag we are.
Yeah, I'm quite interested about that. Also, if you compare, like, as I always or quite often do, like if you work with a destination and you work with like the story of a destination, identity and everything, you can also connect it, like compare it to something else. You can compare it to a person, and you're in a personal change and in your own behavior, that you want to make the change. But it's always hard to I mean, you try to do it, you start to whatever, work out or change your mentality, but then after a while you tend to go back to how it was before. And then you get like, why are you just not making that change that you want to do? And is this also something that you could compare to destinations? Because I think quite many out there are actually agreeing on that we want to make this change. And we have the climate change and everything that we are working for, but now we are in a situation where we actually are forced somehow to make a change, temporarily at least. And could that maybe help us to make it, when we make the change long enough, then we can make that a bit the new normal, like we talked about last time. I mean, Milena, you maybe have more thoughts about this.
Yes, I think what's relevant here is a discussion that we had a little bit a moment ago, and that's that there will be the temptation to go back to what we know to do, simply because it's the easiest thing to do. But I think the smart destinations will actually use this slower time to sit down and sketch out the direction that they really want to take.
Mhm.
And in order to really help avoid that temptation, I think they need to put together an action plan, the specific steps that they want, that they can afford, that they're able to execute given the capacities, given the resources, to come as close as possible to the type of tourism that they actually are dreaming of.
Mhm.
So to me, the important thing is actually to put something in place that will help you behave in the way that you yourself identify as the most rational and optimal way of managing the destination. I think that will be essential. If there's nothing in place, words will remain somewhere, and 2-3 years later we will simply regret that we didn't do anything, but at that time it will be more difficult to actually unroll.
I think it will be important though, because I actually agree with you, but I also think that you started by saying, well, actually none of us knows how this is going to go and what's going to happen on the
Exactly.
other side. So in terms of the skill set or the mentality or mindset that you would need to implement to have, to be working on a plan like that is also a certain amount of agility and still
Yeah,
leave room for the experimentation. And I think that's also what I meant by saying I'm really wishing that part of the mindset that everyone's really sort of trying to adapt right now, that they'll take that forward as well in the coming period, in the period where you sort of start your marketing activities again and you start promoting to tourism and so on. So because I do agree with your point about try and look a little bit further ahead than the immediate urgency of just regaining what you lost, but also leave room to learn as you go, because again it will be a new
absolutely.
situation.
And I
Yeah, it
think
will be new for everyone. Absolutely. Sorry.
no, it's okay. But I was just thinking while you were talking. I mean, I think maybe this could end up not as a battle, but I mean, we have so different stakes in this. I mean, the business owners, of course, they just want to have their businesses up again, up and running. Have the guests incoming and everything, and then maybe the government and the people that are managing the destinations will have other, stakes in trying to learn from this and the mentality and everything. So what I'm just thinking is, I mean, I think that we really should look at the business owners as well, and the operators in a way to help them now get this shape and mindset, because this will be what is, making the business better for the longer run. This will have some kind of competitiveness involved as well, because we want to have slower travelers, we want to have them staying for longer, we want to get more out of this than only, the rest in a short term. So could we in a way make something useful for them in this state to try to in this responsible tourism and sustainable tourism kind of business wise?
I mean, I would venture saying that what you can do now, and I think that's also, I want to point to Milena here as well, but in terms of thinking in the travel behaviors moving forward, what will be the preferences and the demand that we expect to see? And because that will probably also, mean that the industry, there's going to be a change in the products that they offer somehow. Is it now, we've talked about sustainability as a service, will we move into safety and hygiene as a service, and something that you can package in a different way to be, as to showcase that you're making it safer to experience your product. I saw a Danish provider who's looking at doing more time slots in terms of ticketing for attractions, so that the selling point will be, well, if you buy this ticket, we promise you there's only going to be 30 people moving around in this time period, or something like that. And I think that mentality among the industry will also support then what the government and the DMOs will perhaps be pushing for in terms of responsibility. So I don't know, Milena, maybe you have some points to that as well.
I think that's a great point, and I think that the time that we have now should, of course, be used to help preserve the ecosystem, the local ecosystem of players to the extent that that's possible. But to me, simply financial support is not going to be enough. I think that packaging financial support with learning and adapting and recreating, reinventing is going to be absolutely essential, and it's going to be in the interest of the entire destination. So to me, packaging, going through some programs that support but also engage and to some extent require recalibration of the businesses is going to be absolutely important, because it's good for their business as well, because as Signe pointed out, the traveler will be different, there will be different things in demand, and so businesses need to be there and to respond in the best possible way.
So you were saying that clusters are the whole thing.
Yes.
In a way.
Yes, I mean, we all know that as complicating as this is, the traveler experience is delivered by a multitude of players that are in a cluster. So unless we actually work with the entire cluster, with the entire ecosystem, we can't see a significant change. So now is the time to actually try that.
I think now we're talking very much about also like the travelers, how the travelers will change behavior and how they will view the products or the destinations differently. And then I think there's another level of that as well, is the behavior of the residents or the locals, because going to your point, Daniel, we've talked for a while in terms of over tourism, like, oh, how it would be, imagine this without tourism, and then you'd see sort of the upsides of tourism as well in a local community, but now they're really imagining what it is without tourism. They can just look out their windows. But then going forward as well, I think the stigma that will be around tourists, because we're almost moving from inclusivity to exclusivity. And I think, it was like, come and be like a local. And there were like loads of like a local initiatives. But now I think, will that still work? ? And do locals actually want them to be like locals because they're coming in as tourists and they're bringing, that we have this new idea of tourists that are the ones that bring in the disease or that are contaminated. And I think for the cruise tourists especially, they're really going to deal with a huge stigma on what it means to be a tourist coming into a society, and I think you'll be viewed much more as something separate from the local residents. So I think there's an interesting behavioral aspect to the local community as well.
I think that is very interesting question, and maybe this is a good question to end this conversation with, because I think this is something like a open call for everyone that is looking at this. Actually, how are you acting on this crisis? I mean, every one of us are both travelers and locals, and we are on different positions. If you live in rural areas, you are most often on 10 different positions actually, and I think that is quite interesting. How are we together acting on this? I can see both a lot of like heart out there, warmth out there, but also fear. I see a lot of different, aspects on how you actually behave and how you are, taking on this. And it's of course different steps where we are at. First, you are maybe shocked and afraid, but I hope that we will come further and work together more. And this is just the evidence of that. We sit in 4 very different places in the world, and we sit here now and discuss this topic. And everyone out there, you're just invited to continue this dialogue together with us. So
yeah. Milena, would you want to wrap it up in a way?
Thank you. I think that as it becomes evident from our discussion, we in some ways are lucky to actually be part of the biggest social experiment that we would have never wanted to launch or to be part of in this way. But the reality is that we have many opportunities. It's scary. There's a lot of unknowns. There's a lot of personal impacts and emotional impacts. But I think that beyond that, there's a great opportunity to actually try to do things a little bit better, to fix some of the failures that we have made in the past, and actually correct our mistakes. This is a very, very rare chance, and we all love our industry and are part of it with our hearts and with our minds. So I think that together, with some bold, creative actions, I think we can see a better format of tourism.
Absolutely. Some final words from Signe.
I thought it was very well said.
Yeah,
I think
I think
yeah,
so too.
let's explore it together. I think let's maintain the we are and not go to you are, something separate from. This is a joint exploration and a conversation that's much needed. So yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, all of you.